Westcoast at one point were configuring something like 5,000 machines a day just to roll out on behalf of the nation, and had special status. All our staff had special status to come to work to be able to get that done on behalf of the UK.
Firstly, welcome to the latest of our podcast, Sense of Identity. And firstly, most importantly, we're very pleased to welcome our guest, Alex Tatham, an Executive Director at Westcoast. Welcome, Alex.
Delighted to be with you, Paul, and great to be able to give you a sense of identity today.
Well, I'm hoping I won't ask inappropriate questions, Alex. I mean, what I'm trying to do on these podcasts, in all honesty, is to rub shoulders with the rich and famous. I'm hoping it'll rub off in terms of my own position in the market.
I've got some fame, but not much riches.
So if I can, I'll just give a little bit of preamble. This is not about me. It's really about I've been very keen to get you on. So I'd say thanks very much for joining us. Alex, obviously Executive Director of the Westcoast Group, a group we're very familiar with, and the team there, amazing business, extraordinary business actually. For those that are less familiar, Westcoast are very likely, for those that are listening to the podcast, in one way or another, to have touched something that you're involved with technologically, whether that's hardware or software. I think you're the UK's largest privately owned IT distributor, if I'm right in saying that.
Well, we're the largest privately owned IT business in the UK, actually, and one of Britain's largest privately owned businesses.
Absolutely extraordinary, yeah. And
it turns over about £5 billion as a group.
Incredible. And in terms of the personalities and the people that are leading the business, yourself, we've dealt with Mark Davies, who's actually been on our podcast before, with my colleague Adam, who runs the cloud business, and we've spoken, on those sort of journeys around Joe Hermani, who's been the founder and leader of the business for so many years. Extraordinary guy, well known in all sorts of circles. For those that know the Henley Regatta, I know that Joe is the honorary life president and has been incredibly supportive around those sorts of very big public events, and an awful lot that's less public. But I wondered whether maybe we could start just on the West Coast subject, just to give people a sort of a bearing. You've already mentioned some numbers on the scale, because when we were chatting about, for instance, the whole COVID piece, you guys were being leaned on very heavily, weren't you, to suddenly up your game in terms of supplying all sorts of channels that were then desperate to try and cope with this offline new world, also online new world, should I say, remote world.
Well, let me take a brief step back, Paul, and just describe the business to your listeners. And most importantly, this is a distribution and services business that effectively sells to retailers, resellers, cloud providers, a range of software and system integrators across the UK and Europe. And this is providing hardware, as you said, software and related services around a technology business. And we are, for instance, Apple's largest customer outside Apple themselves in the UK. So actually, most mobile phones, iMacs and iPods and iPads go through Westcoast today, whether it's going into retail or going into businesses. We are the largest client and therefore PC distributor, whether it's desktop or laptop business. We're the largest mobile phone distributor in the UK by some distance. We're the largest print distributor in the UK. So just about half of the country's printers and ink and toner goes through Westcoast.
Incredible.
We're also an enormous business with networking and technology solutions, high-end networking business with HPE, Aruba, and Juniper. And so there's a range of technology that we do, but we're also, of course, Microsoft's largest partner in the UK when it comes to cloud and Azure business, and enabling a whole range of cloud service providers out there in the channel. So really a wide variety of business here in the UK, but we also distribute in France, Germany, Poland, and Ireland, and also have a pan-European network of warehouses giving capability for delivery all the way across Europe. So a really amazing business.
Just
and to go back to your key point, Paul, about the pandemic, of course, which is when our school children, everyone was keen to work from home instantly, of course. They all needed an upgrade or some kind of device. And Westcoast at one point were configuring something like 5,000 machines a day just to roll out on behalf of the nation. And had special status. All our staff had special status to come to work to be able to get that done on behalf of the UK. So we're very proud of our part in the pandemic and what we've done there, and the work that we've done, really making sure that the whole country got enabled as quickly as we possibly could. And as the supply, which of course dried up because a lot of it comes from China originally, as quickly as the supply could get to us. And we were really the key mainstay behind the whole country's PC rollout.
Absolutely strong. I mean, I remember, it feels like a way back. It's quite hard to bear, to take a barometer on time when you think about COVID. I don't know how you find it, but you think, how long ago was that? And there's this gap, 18 months, 2 years when COVID was there. And I remember chatting to you and your colleagues at the time about the sheer volume of output you were trying to cope with. And that was across so many brands. I think it was, apart from, I know you mentioned a few of those there, HP and Lenovo and Dell, and it goes on and on, and in fact, talking to some of the product providers with whom we were, very large scale providers that perhaps weren't as ready as they may have wanted to be or should have been. They suddenly put this demand on you guys to access X thousand machines, mobile phones, and those things. So how did you scale to cope with that? I mean, I've been to your office up in Thiel and seen a touch of that, but I mean, that must have been at a logistics perspective. How did you cope with that?
Well, I can assure you, our configuration center normally can manage, I would say, between 500 and 1,000 machines a day. But I'm speaking to you today from our Andover logistics center. It's a 500,000 square foot logistics business based just out off the A303, slightly more impressive than Stonehenge, all as you drive past it. But this business, effectively, we built a huge config line and factory line in this building to be able to cope with that. And we built it within 3 days.
Wow.
So
absolutely.
it was a bit like a sort of Nightingale Hospital, which, by the way, we also provided a lot of product to. But it felt a bit like that. And we absolutely worked day and night to make sure that we got a capability of being able to do this. We trained a lot of people that would normally be used to just picking and packing in the warehouse. And we trained them on how to configure machines. And we just did this on a scale that was, well, unheard of, really.
Yeah, really unheard of. And again, you touched on sort of that expansion, perhaps in more recent years. I think you've been involved overseas, geographically for some time. But again, have you found that, Westcoast success, has bred success in those regions? And where are you seeing the business move in that context these days, geographically?
I think generally, people look at Westcoast, and the reason that they want Westcoast to be part of their geography is that it's still a privately owned business, Paul, and it's agile and flexible as a business. I've just described some of that agility to you a moment ago. To be able to be that agile and that quick, when it comes to a business that turns over £5 billion, it's inevitable that some of the other geographies say, could you do what you do in the UK over here in our country? And some of the vendors that we work with and our vendor partners put us into that category, HP being a good example. We are HP's biggest partner by a mile. And they're very keen for us to do more for them in a much wider range of geographies, particularly in Western Europe. So I think that you'll see Westcoast continue to expand geographically. But the other amazing thing, and of course, this is perhaps one of the reasons that you and I are connected, is that the IT channel is so darned efficient that actually it brings in other channels around it. So whether it's security, whether it's a capability on identity management, whether it is unified comms, which is converging dramatically as we speak, the cloud, that's all coming into the IT channel as we speak, and effectively distribution sits at the heart of it all. So Westcoast have expanded the things that it does and continues to do so to be able to provide a much wider range of products, perhaps, than we did 20 years ago, when we were, the largest, print and client device business. Well, now, we're dropping a huge, great NVIDIA server units, server farms into the city to be able to do this. So, huge change. But the reason is that Westcoast is a really efficient and flexible business and actually draws in other channels around it. And beyond encryption is no different.
Yeah, and actually, it's the perfect segue. It's almost we could rehearse this, which we didn't. But and I'm always fascinated listening to you because of your knowledge around this. But channel, the words channel was something pretty alien to us actually, and I know and particularly more recently, you've very kindly been trying to sort of help us look at how you and Mark Davies in the cloud business, how we can look to use channel as a distribution opportunity. We've been very financial services focused. We've got, obviously a footprint way broader than that, but that's been our focus. I wondered again whether you could perhaps just describe that, because I know your outlets, the distribution piece for you is enormous. A lot of people choose to source and use Westcoast for all the reasons you've described. But again, channel in that context is a little bit alien when you're sat away from it slightly. And I think it would be interesting if you could describe what you mean by the word channel in that context.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, because we use this as if everyone knows how products get from A to B all day long. Yeah, if you are sitting there watching this as an end user, and saying, well, actually, I need a new laptop. Yeah, someone needs to provide that for me. And very often, of course, these days, many end users will reduce the number of IT staff that they have, and certainly change them, effectively outsourcing the deployment of a laptop to their partner. And that partner varies in size, they varies in type, very, very different types of business, and all of them effectively are connected to Westcoast. So it's very rare that Dell or HP would provide an end user with direct access. The end user's really got to have a very good logistics capability and got to be a really big business to manage a direct relationship with some of these guys. But in many cases, they'll have a much closer relationship with what we term as a reseller. And that's a very generic word, but anyone effectively is reselling IT product into an end user base. And those are Westcoast's customers. And they vary, as I said, dramatically in type of business. They can be from a retailer that sells a bit of IT online or on the shelf, to a consultancy business that effectively is working on a new network, a network design for a business, or an AV consultancy that needs screens and install capability for meeting rooms. So there's a really wide range of stuff that we get involved in. And that effectively, that two-tier distribution channel allows producers of IT to have effectively a smaller sales force and effectively focus on production of great product as they push it into a distribution network that isn't just the logistics network, it is a sales and marketing network at the same time, and an enablement network, because actually it provides a range of services attached to those products that are so often important in the deployment, and these days, of course, importantly, in the sustainability and the take back of old product and recycling of those devices.
And I think that's the piece for me that's been a bit of an education, because you sort of felt, as we've learned more about this extraordinary business Westcoast, that you touched so much of the kit that we probably all one way or another are interacting with day to day, which in itself is amazing. But then you look at, as you say, the cloud business, and then that sort of almost one-stop shop. You sort of move into solutionizing and hosting and all those other things, and then the resellers, if I'm using the right phrase there, are trying to be able to lean on Westcoast to be a one-stop shop in that context, because that outsourcing sort of model, certainly in financial services, we're seeing much more of this. It's a very large industry, financial services, but it's very spread. There's some very large enterprises, and I know you guys deal with those guys. But you've also got, sort of a semi-cottage industry, extraordinarily clever people in small businesses that equally deserve support around this stuff. And this is where your reseller network comes in. So, it's quite amazing how, you're spread, aren't you, across the whole market.
Our customers are really varied in size and shape and capability. But sometimes they're very specialist indeed, and buy one line of business from us, and we support that particular line.
Yeah.
We were talking the other day is that West Coast have taken some of its biggest orders recently about large NVIDIA GPU server farms that have gone through two small resellers, because largely it's a financial play. Both of them are £50 million orders in one go. These are huge drops of one particular product that everyone wants, but actually it's really about the finance of these products. And that's another thing that West Coast particularly focus on, is how do we help finance the capability of being able to buy such products that are potentially capital intensive, and make sure that we can turn that into an OPEX model, make sure that actually we can deliver it as a service and deliver devices as a service, so that actually our resellers can focus on what they do, which is really integrating this product and looking after their end users' IT estate.
Yeah, and it sounds like, from a Alex Tatham perspective, and again, looking at this from very early days, barring I know a short period when you were out doing some other things, but back with the mothership, as it were, you really do seem to be the champion and the spokesman for the business in that context, and infamous. So I've used that phrase before, but with you, I definitely can use it. I've never known so many people I talk to that know Alex Tatham. It feels you're also beginning to, or have been, that's the wrong word, been involved in new and evolving technologies. When we caught up the other day, you were talking about AI and some of the partners' experience on that. Is that something for you that's coming on the scene quite fast? It's been talked about by everybody, isn't it, AI, and its goods and bads. And we're doing various podcasts about this subject all over the place. But yeah, what?
Well, AI, Paul, is just the latest technology. If you go back to 2008, well, no one had an iPhone in 2008.
Yeah.
So you just say, good heavens, mobile phones are going to be the latest technology. Well, AI feels like it is the latest technology. And the key thing there is that it's really about managing your data to start with. Data tends to exist in lots of different places, in different clouds, in different parts, on-prem, off-prem capability. And what you need to be able to do an AI project on your own data is to be able to raise that level of data so that it exists on a single plane, and then you can tag it all, which of course you should be able to rely on because it's yours. And therefore you need to make that very secure. It has to be a very secure area, but actually then you need to be able to try and find out what insights that data is giving you. And very often at the moment, I think that the world is struggling with what to ask it. So that we recognize that there's gold in that data somewhere, but I don't know quite what I'm asking it to look for in order to be able to do. And actually, the joy of AI is that that's developing very fast at the moment. And you're finding more and more people come out with more solutions and more ideas to say, well, this is what they want to do. But the first thing they have to do is organize their data for themselves. And West Coast will help them do that.
And it's a really interesting topic in its own right. I saw some more information only this morning about the latest bad side of AI. The fact that people are now seeing this market move at such a pace that the video conferencing equivalent of what I'd call business email compromise, where some huge numbers have been muted around payments. CEOs reportedly asking someone to make a huge payment and then being questioned, as he quite rightly should have done, by the party concerned. So he said, let's suggest that they go online and have this video conference. And in this instance, the AI tool was used by the fraudster, not only mimicked the CEO giving the instruction, but 10 other colleagues that were called into the call. Absolutely unbelievable the pace this is moving at. So a really fascinating subject. Coming back to
there's a lot of danger out there in it, and that's something that we're all aware of, I think. But also, the level of sophistication, as you quite rightly point out, is extraordinary and very difficult to decipher. Nevertheless, those people who say, well, therefore we shouldn't do it, just in case something goes wrong, that I'm afraid is not going to happen. We're just going to go round. And an AI is going to happen, and therefore our job is to make sure that we do it in the right way as best we possibly can and help everyone into a position that we can protect the end users that are engaging with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'm going to go full circle now and come right the way back. We've gone right through to AI and Westcoast. I'm now going to come back to the Alex Tatham and an Alex Tatham that's known by so many people for other reasons. You must get really bored with this, Alex, but I've got to bring it up. So for those of you that perhaps recognize Alex's face, Alex is extraordinarily famous. And I wonder if you might want to just quickly tell us about the Cilla Black episode that I'm referring to, which you must get bored by, but if you don't mind.
Well, listen, how can I get bored of that? For those listeners that don't recognise me, then I could say that I was the first man to get married to the person they picked on Cilla Black's blind date.
I remember, Alex. I honestly remember it.
Well, I'm sure your listeners may, but it doesn't take too long before you start getting to a 30-year-old who go, I don't understand what you're talking about. And that's fine. So for those who don't know, that are too young perhaps to remember Blind Date, it was the first reality TV show really in the UK, which was primetime Saturday night television when there were only 3 TV channels. And that also seems an extraordinarily long time ago. And I met my wife, Sue, number 2 from the West Midlands, in 1988. We got married in 91.
And make sure you make that clear, not number 2 as in number 2 wife. Like you've only ever had one number 2 in the lineup on Cilla Black, as you'll get told off by Sue.
Yeah, you effectively pick from 3 people behind a screen, go on a date and come back and find that you like each other or don't, the case may be. And in this particular instance, Sue and I did, and we married in 91.
Fantastic.
The TV show came top in the TV ratings that year with 17.5 million people watching it. And that would be an extraordinary number in today's viewing figures. But there were, as I said, there were only 3 TV channels, and that makes me very, very famous on what I describe as the Z list, as opposed to the A list.
Very modest.
You'd be surprised at how many people were really into it.
The bit is amazing, and when I chatted to you about this the other day, I believe you. You know, there was the fact that you got picked up. I think you were wandering with Sue through, I think, a market, wasn't it, in London? Yes. And is it Cutes NYC? Massive following on Instagram and WhatsApp. Literally came up with a mic and said, started interviewing. They interview couples, I think, they have on the street now. How long have you been married? Without even knowing this history. I mean, that must be 1,000,000 to 1 doesn't come into it. I mean, that's lottery numbers chances, isn't it?
I think so, which basically means I'm no longer entering the lottery as a result of that. But yes, the thing then went viral, and once again, we hit the public eye once again.
This week. I literally saw it. I couldn't believe it. I saw the Metro, and there was your face staring back at me again, Alex. So, fabulous tale.
It's a lovely story, and most importantly for us, it's a fairy tale. We still live it every day because we've been married for 32 years. It's a lovely thing.
Amazing, yeah, absolutely amazing. I'm very mindful of time, what I do always like to finish off, if you don't mind, and I probably should have forewarned you on this, but one final question I ask all our guests, and please don't worry about hesitating. But if you could give yourself, your younger self, some words of wisdom, maybe 1 or 2, what would they be?
Well, it's an excellent question. I'm going to give you a bit of advice that I actually did get as a younger person, and I give young people today. And I started my career as an accountant, and before I even did that, I went on a sort of experience, a couple of days with a large accountancy practice when I was 17, I think, at the time, in London. And I remember asking the partner, I said, well, what should I read at university, or what should I do? What should I study in order to become a chartered accountant? And he said, well, for heaven's sake, don't do accountancy. Do something that you love. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really good bit of advice. Brilliant. Because the main reason when I go into schools today, as I do very frequently, and I'm very passionate about getting our young people, and particularly women, into IT as a technology business, is that don't necessarily think that you have to be a technologist in order to be able to be in the technology industry. And very often that, I think, it shrinks your capability, your level and your focus. But do something you love, because most employers don't recruit you for the fantastic things that you did at school or university. They recruit you for the personality that you are and the capability that you might be able to show them. And you'll show them much more if you talk about a subject that you did at university or college or whatever that you love.
Yeah.
So I would give all your listeners that focus, and whether they are young listeners to your podcast today, make sure that you do things that you really enjoy, because then you'll talk about it passionately. You'll be much more interesting as an individual, because you'll be interested in what you're talking about. And as a result of that, you come across much better, I think, to any future employer and any future individual. And I read zoology.
I think that's a fabulous bit of advice. I really do. Thank you for that. And the other thing I would say there is, I think it's all about the energy you bring to the room. And Alex, you always bring energy to every conversation. So such a pleasure to speak as always. Thank you so much for joining our podcast. Alex Tatham, Westcoast. Thank you very much.
Cheers.